Welcome to the Solarizing Your Home or Business presentation, Solar Home. My name is Peter Puglianesi with the Haverford Environmental Advisory Committee, and we're fortunate to have 5 excellent presenters and panelists today, all of whom have solar on their house, some for many, many years, some recently. We are going to take questions through the question box if you have it, although we will also open up the microphones at some point if you want to have a dialogue. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Jason Baxter, who is a professor of chemical engineering who does research on solar panels at Drexel University and a solar home owner. Jason?
Okay, thanks, Peter. So as Peter said, I'm a resident of Havertown. We moved here in 2007 and installed solar panels in 2012, and we've been very happy with that choice. In addition to the experience of installing solar panels on my house, as Peter said, I'm also a professor in the chemical engineering department at Drexel University, where I run a research lab where we study solar cells. What kinds of materials might we use to make them better? And to understand what is limiting them so that we can improve their performance and their manufacturability. So for today, I'll just focus on the experience of putting solar panels on our house. So we live on Sue Ellen Drive in Havertown. This is a picture of our installed system. It is a 6.37 kilowatt array. Systems of solar panels are sized according to their maximum power that they can produce. They're not spec'd by their square footage or number of panels typically. So by covering the whole front roof of our house, we can provide 100% of our electricity over the year. As you'll find, there are many different options for choosing installers. And if you participate in the Solarize program, we can help you to pick someone that has already been vetted. So I installed my panels a while back before such programs existed, and we used a local electrical contractor from Norristown, MT Rule, and we're quite happy with the work that they did. So over the lifetime of this system, it will actually produce as much electricity as you could get from over 120,000 pounds of coal. So there's huge environmental benefits of installing solar panels on your home. So one of the things you're probably wondering, and maybe the reason why you're here, is to find out, is your property amenable to solar? So the first question is, does your roof face south? It doesn't have to be exactly south. Within 45 degrees is fine. A contractor who you're talking with would also want to know, how old is your roof? Because if you put solar panels on your roof and then you need to replace the roof, you have to take all the solar panels off, replace the roof, and put the panels back on again. So it's best to replace the roof first if it needs to be replaced. For us, we replaced our roof as soon as we moved in, so it was only a few years old when we went to put the panels on, and that was great. And actually putting the panels on prevents weathering of the roof, so the roof will last longer if there's panels on top of it. Another really important question is your roof shaded? Even partial shading can be a problem, but newer generation microinverters can help with that. Also, what is your roof tilt? So broadly speaking, having your roof tilt be about equal to your latitude, so 40 degrees for us, is optimal, but it doesn't have that big of an impact. And even flat systems around here can be quite beneficial. If the roof of your house or some kind of outbuilding doesn't work, if your yard is big enough, you could consider ground mounting. But if you go through this checklist and it just doesn't seem like solar is going to work for your property, you can also consider purchasing green energy that is billed and delivered through your utility company. And there's a couple of great ways to do that. You can go to makebenproud.com or papowerswitch.com. And actually, the EAC has another webinar that you can go to if you're interested in this topic. Okay, so a little bit about electrical terminology before we get into it. First, efficiency. So the efficiency of solar panels is the ratio of the electrical power that they output compared to the light power that is incident on the cell. So you cannot expect to find 100% efficient solar panels. That is impossible. The theoretical limit is about 32%. And what a regular person can get in the market is typically something like 15 to 20% for silicon modules. So if you're buying panels that are in that kind of 18% range, that's a pretty good product. So we also have to talk about power and energy. Power is the rate of energy production or consumption. The power is the current times the voltage, and it is reported in kilowatts or watts. 1 kilowatt is equal to 1,000 watts. And as I said earlier, photovoltaic or PV systems are sized by their peak production in kilowatts. So when people talk about solar panels, PV, or photovoltaics, they're all talking about the same thing. Okay, also energy. So energy is power times time, and it is reported in kilowatt hours. The number of kilowatt hours that you can get from your solar panels in a year depends on their location. So if you take the same solar panel and you put it in a sunny place compared to a shady place, it will produce more energy over the year. If you put it in Arizona compared to Philadelphia, it will produce a bit more. Nonetheless, Philadelphia actually is a pretty good place for installing solar panels. Okay, so if it looks like your house is going to be a good place to be putting panels, you also have to consider how large of a system would you like to install. And there's a couple of questions that you can use to answer that. So first, how much electricity do you consume annually? A typical family uses somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10,000 kilowatt hours in a year. Around this area in a sunny spot, solar panels will typically produce around 1,200 kilowatt hours per peak kilowatt of the system. So what that means for us is typically you would have a system that would then give you around 6.4 to 8.3 kilowatts if you wanted to cover all of your usage. You probably want to aim to size your system at about 80 to 100% of your current needs. I'll talk a little bit later about net metering. PECO will pay you for the extra that you're making, but they don't want individual homeowners to be large generators of electricity. So they might only pay you for an extra 10 or 20% above your current demand. All right, so that's the question of how much do you need. Second is how much space do you actually have? When you're sizing your system, you can count on the panels giving about 15 peak watts per square foot of area. So our roof has 26 panels. They're each roughly 3 by 5 feet. In that area of 2012, those panels were giving us about 245 watts per panel, so it's 6.4 kilowatts total. Okay, so that's right within the range of what we need to cover our usage. Thirdly, what is your budget? So solar panels cost roughly $3 per watt before subsidies. So if you want to cover your rooftop and solar panels, it might cost you in the neighborhood of $18,000. You can buy the panels outright, or you can choose different options of loans or leases that can help to reduce your upfront cost. So a little bit later, one of our other panelists, Noel, will go through some of the different options for upfront buying, leases, loans, and particular options through the Solarize program. I mentioned connecting to the grid and net metering. This is really important. This is one of the things that makes solar economically feasible in this area. So essentially, when you install solar panels, you can produce your own electricity, but you don't necessarily use everything that you produce right away. Sometimes you produce more than what you need, and then you can feed that excess to the grid. Sometimes you're producing less than what you need, and in those times you can take electricity from the grid. So you have meters that can keep track of how much electricity you have produced, how much you have brought in from the grid, and how much you have sent out. So the way that the billing works is at the end of the month you can subtract your kilowatt hours in minus kilowatt hours out, and that gives you what you need to calculate your utility bill. So some months, typically spring and fall, you've got a surplus. Other months, you might have a deficit. If you've got an annual surplus, PECO will send you a check once a year. So occasionally people ask about going off the grid. Going off the grid would require a large and expensive battery system, so that's really not recommended. Noah will talk about his battery system that he uses because he also has an electric car. But if you have the option of staying on the grid, that is certainly a good choice for you to make. Okay, so a little bit about economics, because this is often one of the most daunting parts of getting into solar. So I mentioned that it costs about $3 per watt these days to install your system. Currently, there is a 26% federal income tax rebate, tax credit that you can claim. That is going to be stepped down after this year. So if you apply that tax credit, it then would cost you something in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000 for a 6 kilowatt system. I mentioned that in our area, a 6 kilowatt system would produce about 7,200 kilowatt hours in a year. Recent electricity bills show something like 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, so 13 cents times the 7,200 gives us about $900 per year that you save on electricity. So you pay a large upfront cost to install the panels, and then you recover it because you don't have much of an electric bill throughout the next 30 years. In addition to savings on electricity, you also have the option to claim solar renewable energy credits. So a solar renewable energy credit, or SREC, is based on 1 megawatt hour, which is 1,000 kilowatt hours. So our system, we produce about 8 megawatt hours per year. Okay, so that's 8 SRECs. Our utility companies are required to have a certain fraction of their generation come from renewable sources, and specifically from solar. So the utilities don't have to build their own solar farms. They can also pay to claim the rights to your solar electricity. These days, the market value for those is about $25 per SREC. So that leads to about $200 per year in SRECs. Okay, so if you add these two together, you get about $1,100 per year that you save or earn by having the solar panels. So you make your payback somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 13 years. Okay, so fortunately, the system lasts for more than 30 years. So you still get more than 20 years of free electricity. Also, having those solar panels adds value to your home. So exactly when your payback is going to be depends on many things. Of course, it depends on how much you paid for that system in the first place. It depends on the current utility prices, and it depends on the shading and the orientation of your roof, which determines how many kilowatt hours per year you can get from your panels. So actually, we bought our panels just before the shale gas boom. So back when we were buying, electricity cost about 17 or 18 cents per kilowatt hour. So we thought we would have more like 7 or 8 year payback. But since that time, electricity prices have really dropped. So it's taking us a bit longer to achieve our payback. But we don't regret it. We're still really glad for what we're doing for the environment and the fact that we are producing clean energy. So I want to make the key point here that the best return on investment is energy efficiency. So while solar can be a good investment, actually the way that you can make the most impact for the lowest cost is doing things like improving insulation and air tightness of your home, replacing incandescents with LEDs. These are things you can do really quickly and easily that have the biggest bang for the buck. Once you've done those things, if you're able to do more, then solar is a great option. Okay, so a little bit more about the details of our installation. This is our house. It faces a little bit southeast-ish, and we don't have any significant shading. So we do have this one tree just to the east of our house, but it only covers a very small corner of the roof early in the morning in shade. So it's primarily totally open. A way that you can quickly assess your own property is to go to Google Project Sunroof. So if you go to Google Project Sunroof and you type in your address, it will show you your house, and it gives this kind of color map where bright yellow means you have a really sunny rooftop, and if it's more on the purple side down here, then you've got a lot of shade. So this helps you to get an idea of whether your house is amenable to solar. So you would like it if probably your number of hours of usable sunlight per year is something more than around 1,200 or so to be a decent candidate. Okay, of course you can choose which facets of the roof you want to put the panels on. And in fact, if we look at our neighborhood, actually we have a whole bunch of houses here that would be also great options for solar. Hopefully they will install at some point too. So just to get an idea for the size of the panels, here is one. So I said they're about 3 by 5 feet. They weigh roughly 50 pounds each. You have different options for aesthetics. We chose to go with the panels that essentially look all black. It blends in really nicely with the rooftops. You don't really notice it much at all. There are a number of different options. If you're driving along the highway, the type that you typically see is what's on the left. These are polycrystalline silicon. They're slightly lower efficiency. They also have a bluish tint just because of a certain type of coating that's put on them. A lot of people don't really like this bluish coating for panels that would go on their roof, but these days most residential panels are these black ones that look quite nice. You can go from the cheaper types of panels to the really high-end ones. Whether or not you really need the premium modules depends on how much power you're hoping to produce and how much you're willing to spend. The mid-range option is great for most people. There are some preparation steps that you'll need to take before installation. So you'll need to make sure that both your electrical systems and the structural integrity of your roof is sufficient for solar panels. This is part of the standard permitting process and installation process. So before your job is approved, a structural engineer will have to come and check out your roof. So our house was built in the 60s with smaller size rafters than is the standard now. And our structural engineer said that we would need to put in a little bit of bracing for the roof. So each of these panels weighs about 50 pounds. So that's roughly a little over 1,000 pounds that we've put onto the rooftop. So this is just to prevent any kind of sagging. Also, the electrical box in our house was quite old. So since we were having things done by an electrician, he threw in a much higher quality, newer generation electrical box. For our house, it was a 3-day job for 2 people. If people are willing to have, the companies will send more people to your house, you could get it done in less, but this is perfectly fine for us. The first day of the job, they put up the racking. Okay, so this is the aluminum structure that supports the panels. They do sink these right into your rafters, and then they do all the appropriate kind of flashing so that everything is watertight. They can also put up the first bits of the electrical so that they're ready to go. On the second day, these guys hauled up the panels onto our roof. I was amazed to see them just put a 50-pound panel on their back with one hand and climb up the ladder with the other. They said for bigger jobs, they do bring out a lift, but for our job, they can just do it that way. So they put all the panels on the roof, arrange them, get all of the electrical hookups going. And then essentially the third day was just the finishing touches of doing everything that they needed to run the wiring from the panels down to the back of the house. Okay, so here's what things look like on the back of our house. And these days, actually, you don't require quite so many things, and not all of these things are actually for solar. So the electrical line coming from our solar panels comes down this way, and it goes down into our production meter. So this keeps track of how many kilowatt hours our solar panels have produced in their lifetime. It then goes into what's called an inverter. An inverter is something that takes the DC, direct current electricity from the panels, and converts it into AC so that it matches the grid. Because if you're trying to feed the extra electricity back to the grid, it's got to have the same frequency, the same voltage, or if it's going directly to your house, when you plug something into the wall, you can't tell the difference whether those electrons came from your solar panels or from the grid. Everything is matched. We have 2 different meters here. One is an in meter for cases when we are drawing from the grid, and another is an out meter from when we're feeding to the grid. These days, 8 years later, all of this is essentially compacted into one smaller box. And then there's a couple of other things here that are for phone and cable that are not related to electric. As I mentioned before, for doing net metering, if you are making extra, it goes to the grid. If you're in deficit, you pull from the grid, you subtract in minus out, and pay your monthly bill that way. For us, typically, because we're producing essentially 100% of our demand, we usually just have the electric part of our Pico bill is about $8 a month for service, and that's it. So I mentioned the inverter. The inverter is the way that we can convert DC electricity into AC. Like with the panels, there are high-end and low-end models of inverters. What we have is in the middle, which is called Solar Edge inverter. It has a little power optimization unit on the back of each panel, and then everything feeds to one central inverter down at ground level. I think that is a pretty common way to go these days. You can also get the higher end microinverters where there's a little microinverter on the back of every panel. This costs more. They do last a bit longer. And then the cheapest option is what's called an SMA inverter, where you don't have any individual panel optimization. These are more susceptible to partial shading. You don't produce as much electricity if any of the panels are shaded. But this is the cheapest option if you have a large unshaded array. Whichever one of these you get, it typically comes with some kind of monitoring system. So here's a picture from our monitoring system that we can check from the internet or from your phone. It basically tells you at any given time how much each panel is producing. It also can keep track of your production on all kinds of different time frames. So here it is plotted on a monthly basis, and as you would expect, we get the most electricity generation from spring through summer and early fall, and not so much in the winter months. You can also see how variable it is from one year to the next. Okay, so while we produce 100% of our electricity for the year, it's not necessarily true that every month is where the demand is met. So for instance, in the summer when we're running the air conditioning a lot, we tend to be a little bit short even though it's sunny. In the winter, we just don't have as many hours of sunlight. So in the winter also, we need to be drawing from the grid. But when you add all these up for the year, we're pretty much even. Okay, we can also look at kind of a week scale output of our panels. So this is the power that they're producing at a given moment, and you can see the day and night cycles here quite easily. We had a couple of days that were really sunny all day long, some other days that maybe got cloudy in the afternoon, and maybe some day that was cloudy and rainy the whole time. So even on cloudy, rainy days, you do produce a few kilowatt hours of electricity from your panels, but you can produce a lot more on these nice sunny days. Okay, this just plots amount of electricity produced per day, and you can see that it ranges based on the weather, but on the whole, we are meeting our demand. Okay, and then the last big question that people have is how long do solar panels last? So you're going to pay this money up front, either outright or by lease for most cases. And I said your payback time might only be something like 9 to 13 years. Fortunately, most panels have a complete warranty for 10 years and a guarantee that the panels will produce at least 80% of their initial performance after 30 years. So these will last for a long time. I also mentioned the inverters. The inverters do have some moving parts, so they typically have shorter lifetimes of around 15 years, at which point they would need to be replaced. Some microinverters actually have warranties of 25 years, so they may last for just as long as the panels themselves. There's really no maintenance. If you've got tilted panels, you don't need to wash them. Rain falling on your panels now and then is plenty just to rinse off any kind of pollen or dust or anything that might have settled. If you have flat panels, they probably do need to be cleaned now and then, but there's no need for you to buy any kind of maintenance contract or cleaning contract. Solar panels are extremely worry-free on their own. Once you install them, you don't even have to think about them being there. So that's it for my part of the presentation. I am happy to show the system if people would like to visit. My contact information is here. For the time being, we can do it from a safe distance, but in the future, hopefully that will eventually go away. All right, so I will switch over to our next panelist, Noel, and Noel will tell you a bit about his system.
Thank you, Jason. And if you'll pass the controls to me, that's awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and present my screen, and I'll just introduce that. You know, my system is a little bit older. I was a bit of an early adopter for solar panels. I actually went to a seminar put on by our local state representative at the time. It was Greg Vitale, and he brought a number of experts in and presented solar technology, and I had some installers, and it's where I met my installer as well, which was a local roofer in Havertown who installed my solar panel. So there wasn't as many options back then, and you can see the costs are a little bit different. So I installed a 4.2 kilowatt system in 08, so it's about 12 years old. It's 21 panels, and if you were listening to what Jason just presented, that means my panels are about 200 watts per, as opposed to what's going on now, which is about 300. So the panels are already about 50% more efficient than what I put in. And then the cost of my system, well, out of pocket, it cost $38,000 that I had to pay to get that system installed. And of course, my net cost after both federal and at that time state incentives brought my cost down to $18,000 for a 4.2 kilowatt system, which is still considerably more expensive than what you'll end up with today. I think what Jason said was for about a 6 kilowatt system, you'd end up spending, I think, $14,000 to $18,000 before incentives. So it's definitely a good time to get into solar at this point. Mine broke even after about 8.5 to 9 years. The SRX that Jason mentioned earlier were priced a little bit differently back then, and that helped to get my payback period down to 8 to 9 years. So probably competitive with what today's break even is, you know, with the lower cost. Initially, when I put my system in, I put it in to fit as many panels as I could on the favorable portion of the roof, which gave me about 65% of my energy, which was kind of disappointing. I wanted to get a little bit higher than that. And so what that did was it kicked off a family efficiency program to find all the waste electricity in the house. And by eliminating the waste and measuring everything, I got a little tool called a kilowatt, and I was able to plug my devices into the kilowatt, and it would actually tell me how much energy each device was using. And we were able to make a few changes and eliminate waste energy. Basically, the any time we have devices plugged in, they're using some level of energy, and so we reduced all of the waste energy, swapped out a couple of appliances, and our energy production without changing the panels, but by reducing our usage, went from 65% of my energy with solar to 90%. So that was really awesome. Well, that didn't last forever. And in 2014, I bought an electric car. And then in 2018, my wife got an electric car. So now we're a two electric car house, and we buy no more gasoline, and we have no more oil changes, which is nice. But our production then went to 40 to 50% of the house, and then 2 cars. And so I guess at some point in the future, I'll be in the market to upgrade my panels to get hopefully something way more efficient, and then start producing closer to 100%. I added in this past year, I guess when we went through that weird March snowstorm in 2018, it knocked my power out for like 3 days, and that was frustrating to have a sunny day and no power in my house. And so I had been thinking about it for some time after some other long outages we had, and I decided to get the Powerwall, but I got it as a house backup system and not to run off the grid. So I'm still connected to the grid, and I run the Tesla Powerwall solely to be a backup solution for my house. And I'm going to kind of go through that in a little bit of detail here on the next slide. This is a picture of the Powerwall installed in my basement, and you can see I've got my original panel, electrical panel all the way on the left, and next to it is a box, and then it's got a pipe connected to another box. So those two boxes were installed by Tesla, and what they do is they determine what circuits that one battery could back up, and they wire those circuits into that box on the left. So I do not back up every circuit in my house. I only back up the circuits that I need to run the house in an outage situation. So I've eliminated the car charger because the car has wheels and I can go to a Tesla charger, and I eliminated my my range. And when I took those two electric devices off, the Powerwall then had enough to run the house pretty much as long as I needed to on solar and battery. So that's how I kind of kept the cost down. To run the full house on a battery, I would have had to install two Powerwalls, and so it really wasn't my intent. On the right side of the screen, you can see I've got some of the screens. So now I do have some monitoring. My system is so old that I actually monitored it with manual readings of a non-digital meter, and I put it into a spreadsheet and generated my own charts. On a little bit different than what Jason showed you as well. Again, it goes back to the age of my system. But you can see now that I've got the Powerwall, they provide some level of monitoring that I get, where I can see instantaneously what my grid usage is and what the battery is using when it's on. I can see what my offset is on any particular time period. And you can see on that particular day, I had a good day. I was generating a lot more solar than what my house used. And then you can see on the right screenshot of the app, I had 12 outage events since last November, which was interesting, up to 5 hours of outage. So there were kind of nuisance outages, if you will. The longest one was only an hour and a half, but I really got it to handle multi-day outages, in which I've had multiple times in my time in this house. So yeah, so that's my my Powerwall. And again, it's a great setup, and I compare it to it's comparative to a whole house generator, if you will. If you wanted to do that, you really don't need the Powerwall because the grid can act as your battery. But I did it again for when I did it as redundancy for the grid. When the grid goes out, I wanted to be able to continue with my house. So it's really comparable to a whole house generator situation. And I costed it. It actually came out similar in cost to what a full house gas generator would be. So pretty price competitive. Here's some examples of some near and distant tech, and I'm going to call the first one is electric cars. That's near. It's here right now. I've been running on electric cars, like I said, since 2014, and there's plenty of options now. We have another webinar on electric cars, so I won't get into that too much, but it's here and now. The bottom one is showing different versions of solar roofing that looks a lot like solar or just like roof tiles, but they're actually solar tiles, and they're I would say these are more of future tech. While they do exist today, there's been presentations of them. They're not readily available yet in all areas, but you can certainly see this coming in the next 5 to 10 years, being something that would be a really viable option for folks that need a whole new roof as well as solar panels. And batteries, we did talk about. I have a Tesla Powerwall, but that's not the only battery option that's available. There are a number of different battery manufacturers that have options available for you to go ahead and get a battery if that's something that you want to do. I guess the one advantage, if you do it with your solar install and it's integrated with your panels, I believe that you would that the cost of that battery would be baked into the overall cost of the solar install, and therefore the federal incentives would apply to that as well. So, and I think I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Melissa Romano to continue the presentation.
Hi, my name is Melissa Romano. I am also a Havertown resident. I am a member of the Environmental Committee here in Havertown and also a member of Havertown Community Action Network, HCAN. I went through the Solarize process last year in 2019 to obtain my solar panels. So you could see here, this is my house. I actually have my panels on the back roof, which on the right side of the screen, you could see my Google sunroof. I don't get the best sun. It's not that bright yellow, but it's not purple either. If you look at the hours of available sun, I'm just barely over 1200, which was the baseline of having ideal sun for solar panels. So I do not get 100% of my electrical use from my panels. You could see I have a big tree in my yard that kind of covers a little portion of my roof, and it's a little hard to see, but my neighbor's roof is blocking a little corner where I actually am missing a solar panel there. It was not an ideal spot to put it because of how much shade was right there. So my roof is more of a southwest facing, not directly south, but I did end up with a 5.89 kilowatt array, and that includes 19 solar panels. I'm missing that last solar panel in the corner, and now they are 305 watts each, so I do get a lot more efficiency from my panels. I paid $16,100 last year in November, and then when I filed my taxes this year, I got a 30% federal credit, which allotted to about $4,830. I also obtained a $250 instant rebate check from the solar installer for being one of the first 10 people who signed a contract. Our panels were installed in November, and it just took one day. There was about 3 to 4 guys, and they worked 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. when the sun was going down, and they got it all done in one day. A week later, I had PECO come out and swap the meter. A week after that, the county inspector came, and then December 7th, it was active, and I just made it before the end of the year. And now currently in 2020, the solar federal credit has dropped to 26%. So, you know, that credit's not going to be there forever. Now is really the time to get solar panels if you are considering it. Our panels, like I said, we get a little shade. We don't have the best south-facing roof, so we do get about 60 to 75% of our electrical needs. I also have an electric car, so that is a little more electric that I use that I'm not able to produce. But I just got this electric car in June of last year, so in addition to my solar federal credit, I also got federal credit for my electric car of $7,500 and an additional $1,000 from the state and $50 from PECO. So there really is a lot of incentives to pursue electric cars and solar panels and reducing your carbon footprint and fighting climate change. So this is a mid-installation of my panels. You could see the racking there. They make sure that the angle is correct. There's my panels. You can see there's a little space. And this is why they say the panels actually cover my shingle. So, you know, the panels are protecting my roof and extending the life of my roof. You can see the tree in the back there, a little bit of shading on the corner. And then like Jason and Noel said, they have a lot more meters back then. Today it's a lot more efficient. The 1 meter from PECO goes in and out. I got the inverter. It's not as much meters these days. This is my electric panel. I had a pretty sufficient panel to begin with, so you could see I still have some breakers left. They install all these stickers to alert people if anyone's doing any electrical work to be cautious of the solar panels, make sure they're shut off, which is done from the outside. Here you can see my PECO bill. Like I said, I don't generate 100%, but you can see at the top of the bill, it calculates how much electricity is being generated from my panels and how much I'm actually using. So you can see right here the distribution charges. This is what I'm paying for. I only paid $4.34. And with my customer charge, I'm looking at $18 for my electric. It's not that bad considering I did this more for environmental reasons, not financial reasons. So I'm happy with that. We also have an app through Solar Edge that can calculate and monitor our solar panels. So you can see, like I said, I got it installed in December 7th, and that's when it just started. And then the winter is a little less sunny, so I didn't generate that much. But as the months go on and the sun shines more, I've been making quite a lot more. It also shows how much emissions we saved, and it will calculate what that means for planting trees. You know, it's all a big picture of reducing your carbon footprint. And so you're saying I'm making about 500 kilowatt hours a month these past couple months. And if you look to the left, you can see my general usage is about 800 or so. So I'm making a decent amount. I did have one issue. When the contractors come, they'll ask you, do you want your electric to go through the side of your house or through your roof? And I chose through the roof, so you can see it comes through the roof and goes down the side of my house. They didn't ask me where I wanted this big long electrical pole, and I was unhappy at the end of the day when I realized that it was very obscene looking, and this is the area of my yard where my kids play and we have parties. So I did contact the installer and I said, you know, I'm not really happy about this. Is there a way we can adjust where this goes? And you could see the yellow line on the picture to the right. That's what I had recommended that I wanted to make it a little less obvious. And they happily agreed. They came out a few days later. They reran that, and I think it looks much better now. It goes all the way under my roof and then straight down to the meters here. So that is it for me. I am going to pass it over to Tracy, who also installed solar panels through Solarize last year.
I am Tracy. I live in Havertown. I also got solar panels through Solarize last year, the same as Melissa. This is a picture of our house and the panels that we got. We have basically a 5.5 kilowatt system. Our roof is pretty much south facing, so you can see here. This is the shot from Google Project Sunroof. So it was pretty good shot there. It's pretty yellow. Our panels were installed in November of 2019, and they were turned on in December of 2019. And they were estimated to provide about 120% of our usage. So we do not have an electric car or anything, and we, have done a lot on efficiency. So we were able to get them to cover more than our usage. So we hopefully will get, some money back from Pico. This is a shot of the racking during the install, similar to what you saw from Melissa. We have, they estimated that it would take about 9 years to pay back. Our system was about $15,000, and then after the 30% tax credit, it ended up being about around $10,000. We have 18 panels, and they are the 305 watt panels that Melissa spoke of. So here's just a few more shots. You can see our meter. Well, actually, this is the inverter, and then if you look kind of right on the side of the house, there is the meter, but it's just the 1 meter as well. A few more shots here. Just you can see how they don't sit directly on the roof. There's the racking, and then there's that space underneath. And then similar to what Melissa showed, we also have the same app through Solar Edge, and this one is showing our usage. I just took this screenshot today, so January is probably one of the worst months, but each month we're producing a little bit more, and we're about halfway through May, and we've already produced more than we did, more than half of what we produced in April. So that we'll continue continue to go up for the next couple months, and hopefully, we'll get a lot of production in the summer. You can also see on the second screenshot, this is a screenshot of May. So by day, it's clear, which days were sunny, which days were rainy, and then some of those in between where we have like a mix of, sun and clouds. But overall, even on the, the really rainy, cloudy days, we are still able to produce a decent amount of solar. So we were very happy with, the panels, and we were very happy with the process, using Solarize. We didn't have to go out and search for a provider, installer, and talk to a bunch of people, and that part was simplified for us. So we were able to get a great estimate with a vetted contractor, and really all we had to do was be home, when they came to give us the information. So I would definitely recommend going through the Solarize program if you are considering solar panels. So I'm going to pass it over to Sue.
Sue Edwards.
Hi. Yes, that's a picture of our house. You can see the panels, barely see them, up on the roof. That's facing directly south. It's a great roof for solar. We didn't even know about Google Sunroof when we did this, but we went through, by the way, I was going to introduce myself. I'm a Sierra Club volunteer, and I recently joined the Swarthmore Environmental Advisory Council. We live in Swarthmore, and we really wanted to put our money where our mouth was and generate our electricity through solar panels. So we at the time in 2016, you can go to the next slide. Solarize Greater Media was educating people about how to go solar and what they answered all of our questions. We went to a presentation in February of 2016. And within a couple of weeks, we contacted the installer that they recommended, and that gave them a group discount if they got, I think it was 30 people signed up. So we expressed our interest, and they came up with a proposal. And our roof was 20 years old, so it was advised that we should replace the roof. And we did that. There was a gap there. I can't remember. It was 2016. We were pretty busy with politicking, I guess, leading up to the elections in 2016. So it took us quite a while to actually move on this. But Pico Electric Company presented significant barriers to a lot of us that were connected with Solarize Greater Media. They outright rejected a lot of people. They actually rejected us at a certain point and said, no, the grid is insufficient. The Solarize Greater Media people went to bat for us, and we ended up being told that for a $1,300 fee, they could remove what they called a fixed capacitor bank. It was just up the street from us. They brought a truck out and did that. But the Solar States installers were kind enough to pay half of that. So we paid $650 and they paid $650. So we got the roof done in July. And then by November, the Pico situation was cleared up, and they did the installation in a couple of days. And the installer dealt with all the permits that were needed from Pico and from local community and so on. And then in December, Pico did their inspection and approved it, and we began generating power. And then so we qualified as having our solar panels complete by the end of the year so that we could take the tax credit for our next panels. We got 16 panels. They're called Trina 260 panels, and our total kilowatts is 4.16 kilowatt hours. We actually are relatively low energy users. I didn't even realize that. We're one of the families that never gets one of those Pico letters saying you're using more power than your neighbors, because we, I guess, use less power than our neighbors. We don't have AC. There's just two of us. We're retired, and we just use about 2,500 kilowatt hours per year, which I wasn't even aware of till I began looking into this. Yeah, that's the front of our house, and as you will see, we have the meters on the front of the house. They asked us if we wanted them on the back of the house or the front of the house, and I absolutely said they need to be on the front because I want people to see that we have solar. The panels on the back are hard to see, but the meters on the front hopefully give some indication of that, and we hope to get a sign to put in our lawn, which announces that we have solar power, and we encourage other people to. So here's our costs and our savings. Of course, the new roof, was more than $20,000, but that needed to be done anyway. It was, or just about needed to be done. It was 20 years old, and the solar installation was over $12,000, but with the tax rebate, it was only $8,463. And the savings that we've taken are considerable. We got as I said, the federal tax rebate, which is going to, if you're somebody who's considering this, it's going to shrink at the end of the year to 26%. Right now it's 30%. Or actually it's 26% now. It was 30% when we did it. It's 26% now, but it's going to become less at the end of this year. And then we also get the SRECs from PECO in May. Every year we get $20 or $30 back. And from Knollwood Energy, we get $70 to $140 per year. It's gone up this year. I don't know if it's going to stay up, but this is the high point this year. And then our electric bills, it's very lovely to get electric bills month after month, 8 months a year, approximately 8 or 9 months a year. All we get is the customer charge, which is under $10. We used to pay anywhere from $60 to $120 a month, and now we mostly pay just less than $10 for the customer charge. So we love that. It was important for us to be part of Solarize Greater Media because we didn't know anything about solar. We might have had hesitations and had questions, and their presentation really helped us to decide, yes, we can do this. So I really recommend people going through a Solarize program, particularly if you aren't sure about this or don't. You've already seen these slides. This shows our production. You can, on your computer or smartphone, you can look at your panels and see how much they're producing on the left. And then on the right, that's our monthly production. And it looks very similar to what other people have shown. As you can see, some years you get a little more, some years a little less, but it's fairly consistent. So I think that's the last slide. Oh, and I forgot to mention that last year we got a Chevy Bolt, and we just plug that right into our house current in the garage and charge our car up. It's slow charging that way, but it charges up in, say, about 2 days. It would charge from nothing to full, 2 or 3 days. Or we can drive the car over to the EV charging station over at the Swarthmore Borough Hall and charge it up faster. But mostly we just charge it at home. We don't drive that much. So it hasn't really shown that much of a change to our electric usage. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have some questions, which I'm going to ask to the panel, and for the audience, we could actually unmute you to have a discussion, but let's do these first two questions for the panel first. The first one is, do you get bird nest or animals living under the panels?
We do not.
Peter, can I take that one? I actually had that problem, and a couple of years ago I had a family of animals that got on my roof and built a nest underneath it, and it was a problem. And the lesson learned was don't let tree branches grow higher than your roof, so that vermin, they actually called them vermin, I forget the animal at this point, but anyway, it was an animal that made a nest underneath the solar panels, and they didn't like the feel of the asphalt roof, so they actually peeled it off and down to the wood, and that was a problem. So I actually had my panels taken down and a new roof installed, and I have since put on what's called a critter guard. It's basically a little 4-inch high fence that gets attached to the panels all around, and that keeps the critters off. And of course, I've trimmed the trees on the other side of the house to keep the animals from going back up on the roof. So yeah, it's definitely something you want to be aware of. If you don't have trees, branches that access your roof, you should be good. If you do, make sure they're trimmed, and it doesn't hurt to get the critter guards anyway. So good question.
So this is Jason. I said we have not had any problem with animals. I agree with Noel. It kind of depends on your tree situation. We don't have any tree branches anywhere close to our roof, so we're fine.
Okay. And the tree situation, of course, is very important. That's one of the things that gets assessed on the front end. We, in the Solarize Delco process, once you make a request for assessment, we will actually look at Google Sunroof, and that tells us how much shade due to trees and incident sunlight you have. Although the caveat is that all that aerial photography that was analyzed for Google Sunroof is circa 2018. So we also ask if you have had trees removed or trimmed or something like that. And then the solar installer will actually have more current, better assessment tools than that. The next question is, does the installation of the panels through the roof void any existing roof warranties? And I will tell you that the solar installation contracts generally have what known as a roof penetration warranty. So that if there are any issues caused by the installation, it is the responsibility of the solar installer to cure those. Hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if any of the other panelists have any insight on that. I haven't heard a lot of issues with roofs due to the solar. But okay, I will also elaborate that that's one of the questions to think about as a homeowner, an existing house. How old is your roof? And so that's a question that we ask. And generally, if the roof is under 10 years old, in good condition, hasn't had any damage, it's a good bet that you could install solar and not have to worry about the relative age of the solar panels and the roof. The solar panels can come off if there's any work that needs to be done under the solar panels on the roof. They come off, they go back on. Noel, I think you had that done at one point to cure issues.
Yeah, so one of the nice things about, the whole issue with the animal tearing up my roof was bad, but the nice thing I learned was that it was fairly, like, really easy to take the panels off and put them back on. Now, the roofer, they have their partner contractor, so they contracted with well, basically they had an electrical engineer oversee the removal, but the roofer removed them and plugged them back in with the oversight of an installer. So it was pretty simple they were I would call them like plug and play almost. They just had to unplug them, take them down, and put them back up and plug them back in, and it worked seamlessly. So pretty easy. The lesson learned was they're pretty easy to maintain even if you have to get underneath, and it didn't cost me that much extra, so to do that little bit of work to take them down and put them back up. So.
Okay, so I'm going to open the microphones to the audience. So if you want to ask a question, just say who you are and ask the question. But while you're thinking about that, I did want to also loop back to the assessment process and what we do in Solarize and what you should be thinking about before you decide to go ahead with solar. So, the presentations talked about financing. The cost that's seen here for moderate sized houses is sort of the typical cost of the project. We've seen some homeowners that have had recently, I mean, they're on a large home, your system might be, twice as big, twice as much power consumption as some of these examples that you saw. We had one recent request, which was the lowest power user we have ever seen. I think it must be a person who lives very frugally off the grid, as far as we could tell. But I think, you know, the most he would need is 3 or 4 panels. So we've never seen anything like that. That's obviously a very low cost option. With regard to the age of the roof, you know, so we've had people with 15-year-old roofs. There is an assessment of the roof structure and the condition of the roof as part of the process. Not that we do it. Once we assess and we answer any questions that you have and you provide us information, if you decide you want to proceed, we refer you to the contractor that Solarize Delco has an agreement with, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But then they will do roof structural assessment and assessment, and so they will identify any issues. We haven't done this yet, but they also identified sort of a mid-life roof option where they've done that in some of their installations, not in this area yet, is doing sort of a spray-on roof coating to extend the life of the roof to hopefully match, if you're in midlife of your roof, to hopefully match the life of the panels, which you heard, you know, you should last for 30 years and still generate, and perhaps beyond. I did want to mention things that you should be thinking about and deciding, and Melissa, maybe you want to jump in and ask, you know, pose some thought questions for them as well. But so given the total likely price range of an installation, which might be anywhere from, you know, 15,000 before the tax rebate up to 25, maybe for a very large house, even more. Are you going to pay for it out of pocket? Do you need financing? So any financing, like anything you do, if you get a construction loan, obviously there's costs associated with the loan. And through this program, mainly we are offering the option of, you know, paying for it outright, a loan through the contractor. You can get a loan outside. It's a bit of a lengthy process to assess, you know, second mortgages or home improvement loans. You want to try to work that through on the front end and think that process through on the front end. The roof assessment, we actually had a fellow on the Harvard EAC who signed a contract, actually not through the program, with another provider, and then they did his roof assessment and they found that his roof structure itself, and this is based on the spacing of the rafters and the size of the rafters, was inadequate and would have to have some bracing. So they said, hey, it's going to cost a certain additional amount for that. That's fairly rare, but it does happen. Again, I'm going to say we're talking about, you know, maybe 5% of the cases or less. But you have, at that point, you have an opt-out option under our program at no cost. You could opt out if you don't want to do that. Now, my understanding of the structural question is any house that meets current code is fine. Okay, some very old houses may be, you know, not designed with very heavy duty or sufficiently heavy duty supports of the roof. Those are the ones where you're going to identify some issues. Melissa, do you have any other things for consideration that you think people should think about?
I think there's a good question since you're talking about roofs in general. If somebody was to replace their roof because they wanted to get solar panels, would that be covered under the solar federal tax credit?
The answer is complicated. In years past, my understanding is that installers will not give you an opinion on that. And they said, well, they will say, well, that's between you and your tax installer. My understanding is people have endeavored to do that in the past, and they have actually done that. I think today the IRS and accountants are a little more clear on the subject, which is they're really separate projects. And Sue, did you say that you had roof done as part of your project?
Yes, and when we first went to the Solarize Greater Media presentation, they said you might be able to get your roof rolled into the tax credit. So when it was time to do our taxes, we talked with our tax preparer about it and hoped that we could do it, and they wouldn't. They said it wouldn't fly. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't recommend trying to do that.
Right.
So we had to pay.
So I think
we didn't get the discount.
Right, and I think that is technically what the regulations are. I think again in the past some folks have sort of waved their hands and gotten it through, but I think today that's there's so many more solar installations and so much more experience that certainly an accountant would not advise you to do it. The other possibilities are electrical upgrades. So of course, if you have very old electrical system, be something that requires a little bit of an upgrade. And under the Solarize program, we have defined prices, the base prices, which are below market prices. There's some options on the panels. There's North America versus overseas panels. There's high output panels is an option at a slight cost premium, but then also some of the options for addressing issues like trenching and electrical system upgrades are also at predefined prices, so that's an advantage. So you know that there's a vetted contractor, there's defined pricing, you're going to get a below market price as base. The first 10 of any calendar year are going to get a $250 rebate after the install. And then if we hit our targets of beginning at 20, 40, et cetera, there is an end of year rebate based on how many folks are in the group program. So the more that go in, well, once we hit 20, you actually get an additional rebate at the end of the year. Now, this is not to say that you can't contract with any solar installer anywhere. It's just what we're trying to do through the program is make the process easier, simply because any contracting of a project of this magnitude can get complicated if you're looking at alternative contractors. You get proposals that are apples and oranges and pears, and they disagree about what to do and what's right, what's wrong. So this simplifies the whole process and is a little bit of an easier way in to get solar. So I think you would decide on the front end, do I want to contract it myself, or do I want to go into the Solarize program? The reason why we have the discounts is because by having a standard program, the contractor is actually avoiding some cost. So that's the advantage to the contractor that allows them to offer the lower cost. So that's a little bit about the program. There, somewhere in the presentation, there was actually also a slide, I believe, that talked about alternatives, ways to identify contractors and compare and understand what market pricing is and so forth. EnergySage.com. Okay.
Yeah, Solarize is part of the national framework, so we didn't invent the idea, but we're running it here in our region to help facilitate, kind of like a neighbor to neighbor helping, and really we're just there to answer questions, to guide you through it, educate you on the process, and to direct you to a what should be an easier approach towards going solar, from folks that have gone solar and through a vendor that we have pre-selected. So there's a number of different ways that you can go ahead and purchase your solar panels, or you can buy it yourself through cash, and typically that's going to have a larger upfront cost, but your overall benefit over 20 years would be higher in this case. You can get a loan, and then of course there's a monthly cost and an upfront cost. And I did get a loan for mine. I used a home equity line of credit to go ahead and do that. A lot of folks have that flexibility, and then you have some costs for the loan, and then of course that interest cost might eat into the overall benefit, but that's one of the ways you can do that. And then there are some leasing options that some folks do offer. That's not really what we're offering here. I think you can get a cash or loan through Solarize. So we do group purchase through Solarize, and we did get multiple quotes. We looked at different suppliers that could install them, and we got what we think is really competitive pricing. And as Peter mentioned earlier, there's also some discounts on the back end if we get enough folks that go through this. And so the way the group purchasing with Solarize works, you request this virtual consultation, and the reason that's important to do that soon is that in 2020 there's still a 26% tax rebate, which is kind of a huge help in getting a return on your investment. You need to get that installation done by the end of this year to qualify for that. It does drop down to, I think, 22 for next year, so all is not lost if you go into next year, but it's a little bit higher this year. So we offer what we consider a streamlined purchasing with less decisions. We kind of walk you through and educate you on the process to the point where you're comfortable going forward with it, and then we hand it over to the pre-selected supplier that we have done, and at that point you should be ready to go ahead into contract discussions with them at the price that we've already negotiated with them. Again, you're getting bulk pricing for your house, so it is a bit streamlined, and you should get a greater discount by going here as well. But as Peter mentioned earlier, you are certainly welcomed if you want to go ahead and look at other options as well. But we have pre-vetted a supplier to go ahead and do this. There's a couple different ways to contact us. So you can see our information here from Facebook for Solarize Delco. If you're in the Philadelphia region, there's a Solarize Philadelphia or solarizephilly.org. And then there's the rest of Southeastern Pennsylvania has their own Solarize southeasternpa.com site. So these are the kind of, the reason they're separate is they're just community members like us, volunteers that are helping neighbors out, because we do believe that this is necessary for a transition to clean energy. So, okay, yeah. So our goals, as I kind of mentioned, we're looking for a sustainable future. We think solar is price competitive. Actually, it's more than price competitive. It's the best price. We folks that have gone through this and have installed these on their homes, myself and the others here, will end up paying a lower price for energy than folks that haven't over a 20-year period and longer. We're here to help facilitate what is a fairly major decision. You're talking about a fairly big investment in your home as well, but you can feel comfortable that we've already done a lot of legwork with the contractor, built relationships with them, and we've also negotiated really competitive pricing that you should benefit from. So next slide. And this is the rooftop solar. This is Google Solar, showing that this is, I guess, the Havertown zip code. It looks like it's shown in there, and you can see there's so much potential to go up. Almost 80% of the buildings in Haverford or in Havertown are solar viable. So that's pretty amazing, and there's a lot of opportunity to really move the needle on clean energy. So some things you can do. There's a tax credit. Yeah, we talked about that. The value of your home. This is an interesting one too. Typically, or I guess studies say that installing solar panels on your house actually improves the value of your house by more than 100% of the cost to you as a homeowner. So if you're one of your concerns is, well, yeah, 20-year savings on electricity sounds cool, but I might not be here 20 years, so maybe I don't want to invest in that. Well, if you do, let's say you stay there 8 or 10 years and you move, you should get the full value of the investment that you made into the panels back in the sale price of the house. So you actually do get a bump up in the value of the house, and that's been proven with studies in the real estate industry. So a little low risk there as well. It's and as far as like cost to yourself, you kind of lock in rate stability for your electricity, and the risk to this investment is pretty low. In fact, from a risk perspective on investments, this is one of the lowest risks investments that you can make, because you're going to buy electricity, and yeah, so it's good. Talk about it from a business perspective. Again, there's tax credits for businesses to shelter some of that income, and there's the depreciation over 5 years for the cost of them. You not only lower your future operating costs, but you get what you call a little bit of price certainty on your operating costs, so you can get a little bit more comfortable in the cost of your operations. And then of course there's the part about being a green business and using that as part of your marketing efforts to really attract a customer base that is more aware and more concerned about environmental impact. So it's really a benefit. It's a win-win-win for for businesses as well. So it's still a compelling reason to do it. So there's some partners that are involved in this. Tavis is the nonprofit that's kind of the holding company for this. Sierra Club, HCAN, as you know, the Haverford Township EAC are sponsors of this as well. And this is part of the Ready for 100, and that's Ready for 100 clean energy. So it's grassroots. These are volunteers. We're volunteers. We've got experience from having installations done on our house, and we've done the research, and we're ready to help. And if anyone wants to walk through this, we're more than willing and able to make you fully educated, aware, and comfortable with this big decision in life. So again, as we talked about, with bulk buying, we're able to get additional, in addition to the really competitive installation costs that all of the folks get. We have incentives built in. If we get more folks as part of this program, there's additional cost reductions for everybody. So if we get over 20, you can see we've got the 5 cents per kilowatt installed reduction. So that's like 1.5 to 2% of your system. If we get up to 40, that gets up to 4.5 to 5.5% reduction in your system. And so, we also encourage you, if you do this, to tell your friends and family about it. And the more folks that we get on, the more beneficial it is to society, to next generations, but also to your pocketbook and payback. So it's getting popular, as you can see here. There's been a number of installations in the greater Philadelphia region. You can see the pattern of installations. Solarize Philadelphia has had a number of installs in media as well, but basically the story here is, it's time to get on the train and join the wave of folks going solar, and now is a great time to do it because of the federal incentives that are rolling off in the near future, and it's really price competitive. So what we do is we do some initial assessments. We look at the solar potential of your property, compare your current usage. We look at your bill, and if you're comfortable with everything you heard and you want to move forward, we hand off to this vetted installer to do that. The installer will do a kind of a deeper analysis. They'll evaluate your roof as well and provide you with a formal proposal. And discounts, as we mentioned earlier, are determined by oh, there we go. There's some more detail. The discounts are determined by the number of signed contract, and the installer does all the work and permitting. And yeah, you get electricity from the sun. And one of my favorite sayings is I drive on sunshine. So it's a wonderful thing to say. So next slide. Yeah, so we talked about a lot of this, but again, it's what we do as far as walking you through the entire process. And if you are uncomfortable with anything, we answer your questions and make sure that you are fully comfortable with the process before you talk to an installer, so that you do that when from a point of confidence. Next slide. Yep, and then the installer gets into more detail, works with Pico, coordinates the permitting, installs the PV system, and schedules all the inspections. So it's pretty much turnkey from your perspective at that point. Your role is to pay the bill at that point and enjoy solar electricity for the next 20 to 30 years. So the process that we went through, and again, we went through a lot of due diligence to get to where we're at. It just didn't happen over a month. There was a period of time where we did an RFP, a request for proposals. We set them out to a number of different vendors. We vetted them and interviewed them and reviewed their proposals and awarded it to one of them. Again, that's all the work that we did on the back end to allow you to have a more streamlined purchasing process and also get that bulk pricing. And based on that, you get really price competitive installation for that, and someone that we've vetted, and we're comfortable that they're going to give you a quality product in the end. So there's some additional things that may come up. So you may need your electric service upgraded if you don't have capacity to do this. There may be additional costs, related to an overly steep roof, or a slate roof might have different mounting systems that are involved. Ground mount systems, if you've got a property that has space for a ground mount system and that's the best place to put it, that's certainly a viable option too, and that would be a little bit different than the pricing that we have here. You can get higher efficiency panels, and that's like, if you're someone like my roof, I have kind of limited space. I was able to fit my 21 panels, but not do all my electricity. With today's panels, I'd probably be able to meet all my needs with the higher efficiency panels. You do get energy monitoring when the systems get put in today. You have the battery storage option, and again, I did this after the fact. I guess when I originally installed my system back in 2008, there wasn't really many viable options for battery storage, but there are today, and that's something that if you're interested in resiliency for your home, you might be interested in. And reinstalls, again, I had that occur. It's not that big of an expense, but if you did have a roof problem, you had to take them down, they do disconnect rather easily and go back up. And Pico also may have some upcharge for outside wiring, and again, that depends on existing wiring in the area. But if you're building a system that's primarily designed to meet the needs of your home, you should be in pretty good shape. But again, it depends on the configuration of the wiring in your neighborhood. So
I did want to mention about Pico. Over the years, they have gotten better at this question of connectivity and additional charges. And they also now have a interactive map that allows you to see if your location is in the green, so to speak, which should have no interconnect issues. So their whole situation, they've been on a learning curve and this situation has improved a bit.
So the tax credit is it wasn't 30% when I got my panels done way back in the day, but it just took a step down in 2020 to 26%. So that's still really, really competitive. And next year it steps down to 22%, and then it kind of goes away for homeowners after that. But you really want to take a look at, if you're considering going solar, now is a good time to vet it out and make that decision, because the tax credit is really, really price competitive at this point. So financing, there's a number of different options. We did talk about this earlier. If you don't have the money up front to allocate to this, certainly there's different ways of getting loans to help move this along. That does affect your payback time, I guess, again, because of the interest cost. But I will say money's pretty affordable right now as far as interest rates, and there's a number of ways to deal with the installer. It has some options. You have your own options if you've got some equity in your house, and if you've got cash up front, of course, that's another way to go. But overall, the payback period does get affected by the interest rate that you would pay for that. So, but you do get a fixed price of electricity, which is awesome. So next steps, contact us. Our contact information is below. You can send us an email, or just let us know after the call, and we'll be in touch and set up a consult with you to start the process. I guess the choice is yours at this point. So, Peter.
Yeah, we do have a question. It's actually an excellent question. If you install a new roof, this is from Julia Smith, a new roof with tile-based solar that incorporate the solar cells, does that kind of roofing project qualify for the 26% tax credit? Interesting question. I think the answer would probably be yes. Those solar shingles, they call them, are available. And I think the number of offers are a little bit lower, but that may be a question that you should ask of your accountant, but I believe the answer is probably yes. There is a slide on business sustainability. If you have a small business, we would certainly encourage you to look at all the other steps and consider the other webinars that we have on electric vehicles, on energy efficiency coming down the pike. If you follow us on Haverford Environmental Advisory Committee Facebook page, Friends of Haverford EAC Facebook page, you'll be advised of any new webinars that are coming down the pike. I just wanted to echo what Noel said, what others have said, which is now is the time. We are, I think a lot of us who are on this webinar feel that we are really past the point of needing to do something with regard to climate change. This is one thing that you could do if your home is suitable for solar. It's a good investment. It's a safe investment. I think competitive with most investments you can find out there, including the stock market, ? The stock market has gone south. So this investment would never have that problem, including it's a good investment even if you are thinking you might be selling your house in a few years. So it's a very safe bet. I think the main question is, how to do it, There are certain age of roof questions. How much sun versus shade do you have? Those are really the main issues that might prevent you from going solar. But there are other options like buy renewable power, which is a subject of one of our other webinars. Okay, well, it looks like we have covered all the bases. Would encourage you, if you are thinking of going ahead, send us an email with name, address, phone number, good time to reach you, and we'll get the process started. I wanted to thank all of the attendees, all of our presenters and panelists. Once again, thank you, Jason Baxter, Noel Smith, Melissa Romano, Tracy Lira, Stu Edwards, and this is Peter Puglianese signing off. Thank you all for attending. Have a good day.